Hey NGBN, it's Brian Jodas with Pick Up the Six Productions. Join us here at Pick Up the Six as we introduce you to the men and women among us who go above and beyond through service, purpose, and impact. Whether it's travel in the United States or right here from our studios, we can't wait to pick up the six with you. Welcome to the latest episode of Pick Up the Six. Brian Jodas here, and just excited to have you join us on this journey. We've got an amazing show today. Really cool conversation we're going to have with my friend Chris Cathers of Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation. Chris's story, guys, is phenomenal. You're going to be entertained and inspired at the same time. I mean, the guy was faced with some sort of tough stuff early in his life, big decisions, leads him to the military, becomes a Green Beret. And then he's going through school, right? Does some military service. He's going through school on 9/11, and obviously the world changes forever, and he's got to find a way to get back in the fight. And he's part of the first group of guys doing some agency work in Iraq in those early days. I got to meet Chris last November when we teamed up with our friends at Enough. And if you've been with Pick Up the Six for the last few years, you've heard me talk to my friend Lowell Coppert quite a bit. But, man, we teamed up and got to meet Chris that way through this incredible journey across South Carolina in November, raising money and awareness for veterans' mental health, suicide prevention, obviously something that we care so much about here at NGBN TV. And I was like, we got to get Chris back on and share his story more, because really it is amazing. And it includes severe battle with PTSD, depression, suicidal thoughts, and almost actions. I mean, really close. He was close to taken his own life multiple times, but he forged ahead. Then he gets hit with bone cancer. So he's going to tell you that story. It's absolutely incredible. We're going to take a quick break at the top of the show here. When we come back, I'm going to show you how Chris and I met and this effort through the Enough campaign to raise that money and awareness for veterans' mental health. We're going to show you a video that Pick Up the Six Productions produced from that trip. But first, a quick sponsor shout out to our friends that make this show happen. Pick Up the Six is sponsored by Mud Gear. Mud Gear serves the unleashed with gear for the modern hybrid athlete that's made tougher. They've created strong, functional performance gear like their performance shirts, shorts, and socks. I wear Mud Gear on the regular. Whether it's for a road race, an obstacle adventure, or a ruck, Mud Gear can help you gear up for extreme performance. Go to mudgear.com, use the code PUT6, and save 15% off today. Really grateful for that partnership with our friends at Mud Gear. Use that code PUT6 at mudgear.com. Save 15% off. They got some great stuff and new innovative gear. They're always releasing. They're shaking things up. Absolutely love it. So thanks to those guys. All right, so Chris Cathers coming up here in just a few minutes on the show. Met last November in South Carolina as we got 8 veterans rucking across the state of South Carolina for awareness, veterans' mental health. Really just incredible movement, right? To see these guys so committed to picking up the six for their brothers and sisters in arms. And, what we know is that we've got to do something about this epidemic that's sweeping across our nation of men and women killing themselves. It's just, we have to do something to stop it. That's why we've launched NGBN TV. But what is also just sort of adds extra to it is that those in the veteran community feel it as well. Right. And you've often heard the statistic about 22 veterans a day commit suicide, right? And something has to happen. So we all rallied behind one brand, one united effort called Enough in November, where we had special operators, veterans, patriots, just walking across the South Carolina, from the North Carolina, South Carolina border down to Aiken, South Carolina for a Veterans Day ceremony. Pick Up the Six Productions was there every step of the way and documented the journey. I'd love to show you what that journey looked like now.
There. All right. Rock it up. everybody here has got tabs and shiny stuff, badges, and tridents, and all that kind of cool stuff. So we've been there, we've done that. This is all about helping our brothers and sisters that are struggling right now. So we expected the mileage, the wear on the feet, that kind of stuff's all not new to us. Carrying the ruck, not new. Veterans in our great nation have always led the way as they are people of purpose, and they continue that purpose after they've left the service. So even though they've taken off their uniform, they still continue to serve in the same capacity. They just are repurposed for a different mission.
And they're willing to still go out there and help their fellow veterans because they know that it's going to make a difference. And they know that there's people out there that continue to need help. There's veterans that need help. There's veterans that will need help. They don't know it yet. And we need to make them aware that it's okay to ask for help.
Too many people are doing too little to help. So what we're doing is we're trying to support a great cause, and doing it, we're creating pain on ourselves, right?
You know, the country's in a bad spot in a lot of ways, but there's still a lot of good people out there that still believe in this country, and you see it when you walk around with the flag on. You have people honking and waving, and it reminds you of how great this country really is.
I'm proud to introduce Lieutenant General Ralph Jodas.
My call to action for all of you is to take these 7 attributes: dedication, commitment, discipline, courage, there's loyalty, then there's fortitude, compassion. How can I take these attributes and turn them into action in my community, right? In my local area, right? How do I go about and find a new purpose, a new mission that I can dedicate myself to? God bless all of our veterans, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Absolutely incredible. We'll meet Chris Cathers after this very quick commercial break. Amino Vital is on a mission to provide the highest quality amino acid-based nutritional products to all athletes aspiring to improve their conditioning and performance. They are a partner of our efforts here at Pick Up the Six, and I use their product before, during, and after workouts. They offer the purest and highest quality of amino acid products that help hydration and recovery. Check them out at amino-vital.com and use the code PUT6 to save 20% off today. Hey guys, welcome back to Pick Up the Six. Today's guest is Chris Cathers of Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation. Chris is a Green Beret, and he was one of the first 10 agency contractors in Iraq in the first days of that global war on terror. After his service, though, Chris was feeling it, man, like in the form of PTSD, and then later diagnosed with stage 4 bone cancer. But that is not slowing him down. Let's meet my friend Chris Cathers. My brother, what's up, man? Good to see you.
How's it going, Brian? Thanks for having me, man.
Well, look, we look badass. We got matching hats on, so we look phenomenal. We got the bro memo. He's got his Pick Up the Six hat right there.
Yeah.
That's my guy. That's my guy. But we got our matching Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation hats on, so we look good. And the last time I saw you, and for folks that are watching on NGBN TV, and you saw that video from the Enough event where we met, dude, the beard was longer. It's a little trimmed up. You're looking clean, man. You look sharp.
Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship with the beard, man. The old lady wasn't having it anymore. You know, she said, "Hey, it's got to go." So it went, and now I'm growing it back again.
Yeah, it was pretty long, but it looks you got a serviceable man. Yeah, it's down to there, man. Dude, what's going on in your world today? We're going to talk a lot about, man, like what got you to this path and just the journey. But I always love to just ask, man, like what's going on in Chris's world today?
Right now, for the whole month, I'm just going to be grinding, pushing our next event that's coming up for BKVF, for Brothers Keeper Veterans Foundation, up your way. It's going to be in Augusta, Georgia. So that just it's kind of like gambling, man. We put a lot of cash out there, and then we just got to make dreams become a reality. So that's what we've been pushing for the next, the last month and a half. It's a big event up there, so that's taking a lot of my time.
Yeah, we're recording the show on the front end of what will be the Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation annual gala. They're going to host it in Augusta. We're going to be on the ground down there, partnering up with those guys and helping them bring that thing to life with some video stuff. So we're going to show you some of that a little bit later in the show. If you're listening on the podcast, you got to tune back in next month and you can see that. You can see, man, just by the look and obviously by that intro, this is we've become friends, man, very quickly, and I'm excited about that. This guy's got incredible service to our country, but he's not letting it sort of stop once he hung the uniforms up. And it's now carried through with this Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation, which is doing great work to help veterans across our country. But man, let's go back to, you told me, man, when we met, you're like, dude, I was just that original ADD kid. Nobody knew what to do with him. He was always moving. He was busy. Teachers were like, this guy's a handful. So young Chris Cathers was kind of bouncing around, right?
Yeah, pretty much, man. I mean, I still feel like I have a little bit of that going on, today, which is good. Having all that excess energy, I try to like directionalize that for doing good things. That's what I've been doing now. But yeah, growing up, I that's what sports was my outlet. So that kind of kept me out of a lot of trouble, even though I still got in a lot of trouble. But yeah, I was the original ADHD kid. I was on Ritalin in 3rd grade because I was driving my parents crazy. I had so much energy. So thankfully for me, I found sports. I tried a little bit of everything from wrestling to basketball to football, martial arts. I started when I was 6 years old and then carried it through all the way through high school. But running was my outlet that really stuck with me. And I did that from 8th grade all the way through my senior year. And yeah, I was a pretty accomplished runner for, what it was at the time, but that it's pretty tough to get like a running scholarship, especially where I was at. You have to be very exceptional to kind of get into the. Where
were you growing up?
I was near Philadelphia. I was in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So about 45 minutes north of the city in Bucks County.
Yeah. Team Wawa. What's up?
Yeah. Wawa, man. They make great hoagies, dude. Shout out Wawa.
Yeah. We got married in Northeast Philly and had our wedding reception in Ben Salem. So, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Ben Salem's close, man. We used to compete with those guys.
That's right. All right. So parents go through a tough divorce. That probably has an impact on your life, but your dad, when you graduate from high school, are like, look, man, you basically have 3 options. You're going to go to the Army, you're going to get a job, or you're going to pay for college.
Yeah. Which, I had no money. I was in high school.
Right.
So yeah, I was on a bad path. I thought I was going to end up, either on the streets, I didn't expect to really have a long lifespan with the track that I was on because I was such a troublemaker. And, I have this whole story about my father actually arrested me in high school, which is kind of, unique, right? So like one of his deputies came into school and actually pulled me out of class because I was carrying a weapon and got in a fight in school, and somebody brought a pistol to school at the same time, not unrelated to me, just
Right.
bad timing, bad
That's
coincidence.
terrible timing. Like, what are the chances?
Yeah, so my dad wasn't happy. Made the front page of the newspaper. I was suspended for 10 days. If it happened today, I would have been in jail and I would have been expelled from school. And I got another chance, but yeah, I was getting a lot of trouble. I got arrested 3 or 4 times in that year between 11th. I think it was 11th grade going into 12th. And so yeah, he gave me those 3 options, and ultimately I decided. I went down to MEPS. I signed up for 6 years right off the bat. I came back home. So what'd you decide to do? I said, I just joined the military. He said, how long? I said, 6 years. He goes, you freaking idiot. I was like suggesting maybe you try it out, maybe do a 3-year commitment, maybe not a 6, but it worked. It worked well for me. I'm glad I did it. I needed a little bit of a kick in the butt and a reality check, and it allowed me to focus my attention to do good things and be surrounded with, I got to work, that's why I'm still involved with the veteran circles. It's a huge part of my life because it really kind of put me on the right path, and I got to walk with giants. It's kind of cliche to say it, but compare my career was fairly short in the military, but then I went on to OGA. But those years I got to work with really exceptional people, and I tried to take the best out of those situations and apply them to my life, and I still carry on to this day. So I'm really grateful to work with so many great people.
You guys can just tell by the look at him. You're like, that guy's got to be sort of special forces. You look over his shoulder, Dale Presso Liber, that sign of the Green Berets. It's funny because obviously great friend of our show. And if you've been with Pick Up the Six for the last few years, you've got to meet Lowell Coppert along the journey. We become almost like brothers. He said that same exact thing. You guys are both Green Berets. He said the same exact thing, to stand on the shoulders of giants through his career. That's striking to me that both of you guys who go through similar programs, different time, right? He's a little bit younger than you are, right? So he came in after you. But to say that same exact thing, I wonder if that's just, man, is that a Green Beret thing? You guys are wired a little different, man, than some of the other SF guys that I've met.
I think what's different is like, I went through when I was older, well, for me, I was in my mid 20s when I went through selection, and I had no background, man. I didn't have an infantry background. A lot of these guys came from like Ranger Battalion or their 11 Bravos. I had like a soft skill MOS because when I did that 6-year commitment, I wasn't smart enough to know at the time. They said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be Airborne Ranger. I said, absolutely. And that was I got screwed by a recruiter story, right? So 2 years in, I accelerated, and, I was maxing my PT test. I was always like physically, I just love, getting after it, in the gym or working out and running and all those things. So I quickly realized that I wasn't in the right path. And I said, I want to go to Ranger school. You can't go to Ranger school because I wasn't a combat MOS at the time. But they allowed me to go out to selection. So I made it through selection first go. And it was definitely really challenging for me because I haven't had that kind of level of push before. But when I went through it, it was like, it was a little bit of a wake up call because I realized how deficient I was when it came to combat, having those combat skills to apply. So I had to play a lot of catch up, man, from a mental perspective, not physical. Physical stuff was always easy to me. Well, not easy, but I can grind, that's one thing that I feel that I'm really good at. But when it came to the mental, like looking around to my left and right with the other people that had those experiences, I was like, man, I'm way behind the power curve, man. So it took me a bit, to learn. I just kind of fed off some of those people, and they took me under their wing and helped me out, And I think the thing that you were mentioning with Lowell, it's really about a team atmosphere. Everything, even with what I do today, if the business succeeds, my team did a great job. If the business fails, it's all on me. That's how we're raised. Like when it comes to special operations, it's a heavily team environment, team approach. Everything's about your team, man. The guys to the left, the right of you, they're the ones that you care about more so than yourself. Typically, at least that's how I always have been. So
yeah, and that was so amazing, man. When we got to hang out last November, that week leading up to Veterans Day, and we kind of become a part of this sort of ragtag thrown together team that's marching across South Carolina with this shared mission. But I think our whole focus throughout that thing for the success was, all right, let's focus on the team. Let's focus on the team. We don't need to worry about each of us individually getting our flowers or getting our praises, man. We got a bigger mission at hand here, which was at the time spreading awareness, right, for veterans, mental health, suicide prevention, all that. We're able to rally around it. All right. So on 9/11, are you active duty? Are you out at that point? Where are you at on that day? Because then I know the fire kind of gets kicked back up and you're like, man, I got to do something here.
Yeah, I was actually in college because, I tell people I was too stupid to be a medic, which is pretty much true, right? I was a weapons sergeant, so it's kind of like the, I don't know if I should know if Lowell was or not, but anyway, I was 18 Bravo, so I wanted to kind of prove everybody wrong and go to the PA school. I was interested in medical. Honestly, I was kind of hoping to get selected as an 18 Delta and do some of that work, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. So I went to PA school up in Philadelphia to a private school. And while I was in college, 9/11 occurred. I was actually getting my hair cut that morning. And when the first tower, the plane hit the first tower, and I was in the, getting my hair cut, it was in process. And so then I was driving to school when the second one hit, and I think I was going in for like a biology test or something. And I knew immediately, I turned around, went back home, and, shortly thereafter, I called back to my team sergeant at the time, and I tried to get back on the teams. I said, hey, what do I got to do to get back? And essentially I got talked out of it. He's like, Grenada, Panama, the first Gulf War, these things are all over really quick. By the time you get back, it's going to be over. Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, no shit.
Some other podcast that I did, my team sergeant's like, hey man, way to make me look like a jerk, right? So, but nobody knew at the time.
Yeah.
It was going to lead to 20 more years of, essentially like combat operations in the Middle East. So I was keeping contacts with some of my friends, and one of my friends was working in Afghanistan with the agency, and he said, hey man, would you like to be a part of this? And it's a quicker pipeline to get you, they're looking to recruit people to get, punched out overseas, and it'll be a little bit quicker than going through the SF route. And I said, heck yeah, man, what do I got to do? And that's kind of led me to go work for OGA in the early days of Iraq in 2003.
How long did you end up doing that?
My first deployment was in the summers, right after the invasion in 2003. So I spent most of the 2003 in Iraq, went back in January all the way through like Fallujah when that occurred. No, I guess that was, about late in the spring is when I left. So I did rotations between Iraq, Afghanistan, and Israel, and I hung it up around 2006 to kind of, at that time I thought, hey, what am I going to do? What's going to be the next step? And I had, undergone a couple IEDs and things like that. My ex-wife at the time was like, hey, look, you just got hit twice in 1 week, by IEDs. And we had just gotten married at that point. And she's like, you might want to consider, what are you going to do in your long-term strategy, when this is over? And I was like, man, I don't know. I like doing what I'm doing. But I transitioned to indigent armor. A couple of my buddies, I had invested into a armored vehicle company that was started out in Stanton, California, or Southern California, back in the early 2000s. And I kind of got brought into that company as a project manager initially. Then I got my business degree, started working on Six Sigma and all the automotive things that you need to kind of run armored vehicle production companies. And we expanded really quick, really fast. Between, the four of us, we went from 26,000 square feet in California to Charlotte at 68,000. And then eventually we ended up in Fort Mill, South Carolina at 300,000 square feet on 33 acres. And ended up selling the company to private equity in around 2010. So it was just like, I took the chaos from the early days, like being in Iraq and combat situations, North Africa and things like that. And I translated that to a business perspective, because running startups is a lot of chaos, and you got to take the chaos and make process, right? So I kind of I thrive in those environments for whatever reason. It kind of keeps my mind distracted back then. I had a lot of things going on in my mind. And the more hard work that I would put in, similar with the gym, that's when I had a calming effect, was when I was totally occupied. The worst thing for me was when I would sit home and I had nothing to do. That's when I would lose it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Those moments of isolation, man, that's when a lot of that happens. Hey, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about that. Plus, we got to dig more into what Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation is doing. Before that, though, guys, we got great stuff going on at NGBN TV. Head to the website, though, because now we've got some NGBN gear, which is amazing. We've got hoodies, hats, all that good stuff, so you can support this pirate ship as we are on a mission to provide content for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s to quite literally save men's lives. We need you with us. Go to ngbn.tv, click the store link, use my code PICK6. You can save 10% off today. And I got to give a shout out to my man, Joe Baker of Joe Baker Fitness. Dude, I was working out, man, doing boot camp workouts, lifting a little bit, and I just was feeling kind of a little stuck in a rut. And I was like, I got to get stronger at a couple of core competencies so I can make sure, like you, that I can do the things I need to do to take care of my family. Like if danger's in the way or if shit's going down, I got to be able to pick my family up, right? Get them out of danger. Joe's locked me in with a great workout. Go to joebakerfitness.com. And one of the best things he has is this community. He's got the bakery. So you can get in there with other folks who are also getting after it. And they've just got a great group going there. So go to joebakerfitness.com, get some more information, tell them I sent you. Quick more sponsor. We'll be right back. A little bit more with our conversation with Chris coming right up. Amino Vital is on a mission to provide the highest quality amino acid-based nutritional products to all athletes aspiring to improve their conditioning and performance. They are a partner of our efforts here at Pick Up the Six, and I use their product before, during, and after workouts. They offer the purest and highest quality of amino acid products that help hydration and recovery. Check them out at amino-vital.com and use the code PUT6 to save 20% off today. All right, we're back with Chris Cathers of Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation. Man, just got to hear your story a little bit. You talked before the break about, man, those moments of, if you be by yourself, or the sort of moments of isolation, when you were busy, when you were working, building business, all that, maybe things are moving all right. But in those other sort of quiet moments, so how'd you deal with that, man? How'd you have the awareness, right? What was that kind of the sort of mental health journey like for you?
Yeah, I think what kicked it off is my buddy who brought me into the armored vehicle company. His name was John Michael Zinn. He was a SEAL from the West Coast, and we were real good friends. We ended up. My buddy Ron introduced us when we were working in Iraq. We became partners, running around, running and gunning together. And, you know, they started up the armored vehicle company, asked me to come in. I was initially came in as an investor. Then I kind of came in on the ground level with him. So it was like dog years, you know, running in startups, running in Iraq is like, you know, essentially dog years, you know, every month is kind of like a year, right? So we ended up living in the same neighborhood. He was a couple doors down. It was kind of like the mafia. You know, we had like our CFO, other general managers, himself. We're all in the same hood, right?
It's like, you know, the kids in those movies and the shows are always like, we're with the same people all the time and we call them all uncle and nobody's related. I'm like, yeah,
it felt like the mob, man,
right.
Because we're like, you know.
Not that we're suggesting that the mafia is real or anything by any stretch. Of course not. Right?
No, you guys are cool, man. Tracksuits are really awesome. But yeah, we kind of, you know, we were living and sleeping in the office. Sometimes we'd stay in the office for 2 days straight, like no exaggeration, right? So I'd come home at 2 or 3 in the morning, and his light would be on. And he was just invested himself into the business, you know, and learning this like a sponge. So he was a good mentor to me. He was younger than me a couple years, but he went on a business trip when he was 32 years old to Amman, Jordan, ended up dying. I might have you know, his age slightly wrong, but he was pretty young. I think he was around 32 back then. And I got a call at 3 a.m. that he passed away, you know, and initially we weren't sure, you know, if it was him, but we had other people from our business that were with him, and some were from the SEAL team, some were from the agency, some were from other government agencies, all trusted guys. And when I got the call, I was like, holy shit, man, like, you know, we're out of the game. We're not running and gunning anymore. This was a business trip. He was at SOFIX in Amman, Jordan. So anyway, long story short, because I could talk about this for like extensively. I've done, you know, 4-hour podcast on this one section. It's pretty bonkers, but ended up, we had to walk up at 6 a.m. to tell his widow that he'd passed, and his 2 daughters that he had, she was 9 months pregnant with his first boy. So when the kids answered the door for me and I made contact with his wife, it just wrecked me, man. Like, you know, she wailed. And I talk about that because the sound, I'll never be able to forget it. It was just like something I've never heard since, you know, and it was like 9-month pregnant woman knowing, just looking at me, that her husband is gone, you know. And I've had to do other news. I've lost a lot of friends, over the years. But that one just hit me to the core. So, then I had to go back to work. I had 65 employees and tell them that everything was good to go, because we just got bought that week prior by private equity. So anyway, long story short, there was some gray area, if you want to call it that, with the private equity company. And I don't want to get sued, so I can't really talk too much about this part of the story. But
Sure, no problem.
We had $3 million life insurance policies, and I worked there for 8 months with this company, knowing my gut just told me something was off, and I spent a lot of time, with his wife and family, trying to make sure that everything was squared away for him. And they ended up telling, I gave them an ultimatum 8 months later. I said, hey, call New York. I've had enough. They're going to have to say, are they going to give her the life insurance money or not? And they said, tell his widow to sue us. So on the spot, I resigned. My buddy's dead. I resigned. My ex-wife at the time filed for divorce right on the 1-year anniversary of his death. And, I had a 6,000 square foot house on the lake. I had 12 properties, all these physical things. I invested all my money from contracting, and I was doing really well for myself, which was great. But so outwardly, everybody's looking at me like, hey, man, this guy's living the life, man, young 30s, and he's balling, right? And my life was a wreck because I just lost everything so fast. So I started drinking and doing pills and things like that. And I just my anxiety was so high that I couldn't even be around people, that my friends. It got to a point where I just isolated myself. After work, I would just go to the gym, work, go to the grocery store. And that was my human contact, really. And so that was the first time I tried to contemplate suicide I think it was in 2011. And it was pretty wild because these things started happening over a 6-month time period. It just got worse and worse and worse. And the only time I would get reprieve would be when I would work out and do like MMA style workouts, because I was really enjoyed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, for a hobby, And so I was training with UFC fighters and like world-class athletes, and my cardio, I got down to 170 pounds, like for right now I'm about 210, 215. So like, I was real thin. I didn't even realize it. And I would just self-medicate to sleep, taking Ambien, taking pills, Oxy, all the things. And I was only doing it. It wasn't because I was just, seeking those things out. It was just, that was the only time I could like get things to be calm. And,
It's the only way to quiet some of that stuff down.
Yeah. So it was pretty bad. And then I had all the pressure, like I got to go find a job. I had no exit strategy, have no job, no friend, no wife. What am I going to do? I got a $5,000 mortgage,
Yeah.
So it was a lot of pressure. And I ended up going to my next defense position. I ran 2 more defense companies and got back into private security. But during that time, I never really got through. I thought I could figure it out. I was eating really healthy, really clean, but I was still drinking a lot, like nobody would know because, even at 45, I still had a 6-pack. People were like, oh, this guy's not, hurt, doing something to hurt himself. But I really was. So it didn't come until 2019. I was on my 3rd defense, job. And then I got back into private security, doing executive protection for celebrities and things like that. And I got diagnosed with a pretty rare form of chondrosarcoma. I had some pain in my hip in 19, and I was like, man, this doesn't feel right. I thought I had a sports injury from jiu-jitsu because I was doing jiu-jitsu quite a bit at that time. And I was getting older, I was in my mid 40s. And long story short, I was like, let me just get an MRI because I just got back from Milan. I was protecting a client overseas. And, I was walking up some stairs and I was like, man, that pain doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? And the radiologist called me really quick. Like it was probably within 45 minutes. And he's like, hey man, I've been doing this almost 30 years and I've never seen anything like this. So, you might want to be in the ER like right now. And my wife worked at the ER here. And I was like, well, that sounds bad. And a lot of my friends that I worked with in the early days of Iraq and in Afghanistan, specifically Iraq, were getting sick with a lot of cancers, and quite a few of us, passed away. I think we had like five people that had ALS. We had brain cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, like all these guys that were fairly young and very fit started dropping off. And at first I thought, man, it sounds like a little bit of a conspiracy theory. I'm not going to get on board with that. There's not enough data points. But over the years, more and more funerals that we went to, that's what saved my life. And that's my public service announcement to other veterans. There's a great nonprofit, and I'm going to shout out Chelsea at 107 Foundation. They really do a lot for veterans that have cancers. The prevalence of veterans that have cancer is exceptionally high. You know, if you're just in the military, you're more likely to have cancer, and they have a lot of data behind all this. And that's what really saved my life, because if I didn't know, I probably would have put it off longer. And I was very close. I was 230 pounds doing jujitsu and lifting, pushing a lot of weight. And they said my femoral head was so compromised that I was probably this close to snapping my femoral head, like in a joint. And if I did, I would have been an amputee at the hip.
Whoa.
Yeah, my tan lines at the beach would have been totally
all jacked up. Man.
So, yeah, it kind of saved me. So at first they didn't know, you know, and they misdiagnosed me. And again, that's my public service announcement. I'm like, I tell veterans, especially as you get older, man, do your blood work, you know, go to your primary care doctor and get screened for all the different types of things that you can, because it ultimately may save your life.
And like, be an advocate, ask questions, man. Like, don't just,
you have to advocate.
You got to advocate for yourself and just ask. It's like, you got one shot at this thing. It's your body. Like, ask anything you want.
Yeah. And if I didn't, I was in the hospital 5 days. When that radiologist called me, I got admitted immediately with my wife. She worked at the same hospital where I got admitted. And I was in there for 5 days, and they did a fine needle aspiration with a needle about this big. It was probably about 7-8 inches long. And they stuck it into my femoral head, and they missed, of course. But they're like, man, you know, we think you're good to go. We're going to put you on some antibiotics. We think you have a bone infection. And I was like, man, I'm super healthy, bro. Like, it doesn't seem right. That's something like older people tend to get, right? And they kind of slapped me on the butt, and they said, hey, have a good one, man. And I said, I want to get a second opinion. And that's where, just like you said, you got to advocate for yourself. So I got there's a little Indian woman named Dr. Raya Pudi, and I went to her, and she goes, I don't think you have cancer, but I'm going to send you to an ortho-oncologist. They're going to do a bone graft and try to repair that bone. And when they went in, I called them a week later, and I said, hey, man, you guys got my results, you know, from that biopsy. And they said, yeah, you have cancer. It's pretty rare. It's like less than 1% of 1% of all cancers. And you're going to have to get your femur taken out in your hip, probably. And I'm sure you got questions. I was like, yeah, I got questions. Like, am I going to freaking die, dude? It's a pretty big question.
It's a pretty big follow-up. You'd want to get some data on that.
But yeah, so I went through a bunch of surgeries. They took my femur out, my hip, my glute, my quad on that one. And I almost lost my leg a second time. You know, that was a pretty brutal, they called it a brutal and radical surgery. You know, it's like, wow, sounds fucking, you know, sounds serious.
Yeah.
But
so your life takes this, like, that's a pretty drastic change. Right? That's a drastic shock to the system to be given that kind of news, those kind of procedures, right? To start sort of chopping away. But does it, I mean, man, does it in a way, I think it does just from being around you, lock you in, right? Does it in a way say, I don't know how much time left I got. I don't know what else is going to happen. I got to get rolling on some stuff that maybe I'm passionate about. Is that the genesis and the drive behind Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation, right? Like, that all seems to me like it probably kind of coincides a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things, it was a wake-up call with my mental state, right? I was like, look, I'm pretty good at grinding. I'm pretty good at suffering. I call myself a professional sufferer, which is pretty, you know, it's a moniker you don't really want to have, you know.
Man, listen, man, I got a lot of friends that are similarly wired to me and you that would tell you that suffering is a necessary part of life, you know, and you can rejoice in it because you know it's going to give you some endurance and some character and some hope, or you can run from it. But if you run from it, it's ultimately you're going to have moments. Nobody's going to be able to get through this thing scot-free.
Yeah. And I think that's really with the growth mindset. I always preach to people about growth mindset, right? Like, I might not be the most articulate guy in the world, but I'm pretty experienced at growth. And through that, like, darkness, I was suffering for about 12 years where I was suicidal, like, pretty heavily, like, through not constantly throughout the year, but it would be off and on, maybe a month at a time. Then it'd wane a little bit. the more I drank, the more the darkness would hit, right? And when I got cancer, I was like, man, I got to get my mind straight for my wife, my family. You know, I want to be present, and I want to get after it, man. I want to, you know, cancer might get me in the end, but I'm going to make it my little bitch until that day comes. That's just how I'm wired, right? I'm not saying it's for everybody, but that's the only way I know to go about it. It's like, I'm going to get after it, man.
It sure beats sitting around and letting it get the best of you at every moment. It doesn't mean you probably don't have bad days, tough days.
Everybody has their bad days, but you want to have more good days than bad days. And when it talking about growth mindset, it was like, man, I was struggling so hard just to I was putting a gun in my mouth so often where I was like, dude, I'm going to end up, I got cancer now. It was like my new enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. So I was kind of like, well, let me start dealing with this stuff straight on. While I'm dealing with cancer, for 4 years, I dedicated myself to put in not only work on my physical body, but my spirituality, but my mind. You know, like your mind's super powerful, man, and your mindset is so important. And when people struggle, like I struggled for 12 years, and I'm like, man, how are other veterans doing it? And then I came to the realization after losing a bunch of friends with suicide myself, they're not doing it. You know, Unfortunately, you lose that battle. You get so exhausted after a while. I remember getting to a point where I was like, dude, I'm just tired, man. I'm over it. I'm over the suffering of 12 years, man, just grinding. And I'll tell you what, stage 4 cancer, special operations training or selection and assessment, buds, whatever. Nothing's worse to me than the suffering that I personally went through and other veterans are going through. I kind of identify with those guys because everybody's not the same way. I understand that, but you know, that suffering is next level, man, when you want to end your life because you don't feel like there's any other way out. And that's where the growth, you know, if you're paying attention during that, right? So when people go to the gym and they get after it, man, and you work with a lot of people that are maybe getting older or whatever, you're always going to have pains and things like that. When you're in the gym, you look at fighters, right? Your boxers, MMA, their training is way worse than the actual fight. Typically, you're killing yourself for 6 weeks, you know, in camp, 2 months, depending on what the length of your camp is. That's where your growth happens, where when you go to perform the night of the fight, you've already put the reps in, man. You've already killed yourself leading up to that fight. The fight is, you know, besides the weight cut, is the easiest part. Or it can be, besides your nerves, because you put the reps in, you're confident. And I feel like that's the thing, you know, in the darkness, that's where you can really grow if you're paying attention to it.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to get better at business, or school, you're studying for tests, it's miserable. When the test's over, you're like, okay, that wasn't that bad. But the studying was the hard part. That's you're putting the work in.
That's right.
So I did that for 4 years, man, and it all paid off. It took me a long time. I was doing 7 modalities at one time. It took me 4 or 5 hours a day that I was going through therapy while going to the gym, while trying to battle cancer and going through all these procedures. You know, I had my lung removed in September of 2000. I guess it was last year, year and a half ago. And then they did a biopsy about 6 months ago on one of my lymph nodes where I was like, dude, this might be it. You know, I'm already stage 4. I'm working on stage 5. Now it's in my lymph nodes, but I got too many things to do. So anyway, I kind of put all that past me. And then I decided, you know, look, I want to be a force multiplier and I want to help as many veterans as possible. I started with a documentary and I was like, man, this costs a lot of money. We're still doing that. It's still going on right now. You know, it's kind of changed hands once or twice, but I was like, how many people can I help through a documentary for a foundation where I can help as many people. As the bigger and better that I make this company, the more people that I can physically improve the lives or save their lives, right? And optimize their lives. And that's where what led me to BKVF, or Brothers Keeper Veterans Foundation, 2022, with help of Journey Home Project. Charlie Daniels, band manager, he took a chance. I interviewed him for the documentary, and David Corlew, who was Charlie Daniels' tour manager for about 45 years, said, hey man, I want to pay for your legal setup for your nonprofit. I said, dude, that's amazing, through their nonprofit. And I couldn't appreciate the guy more. I give him a shout out wherever I can, because he's a true cowboy, handlebar mustache, 73. He's out in Tennessee working on a farm when he's not pushing Journey Home.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of what led me to Brothers Keeper Veterans Foundation now, because I put the work in and I got to a place where I'm, solid, mentally. Now, dealing with one-on-one, I can only save so many people. But now we're impacting so many different veterans' lives on a daily basis sometimes, and I was getting like guys that were suicidal have had 3 calls in one day, like people that I knew that called me. And when I wasn't good, that stuff would weigh on me. And I was like, dude, if I say the wrong thing, this person might hang up. I've had people hang up on me, or I might hear a gunshot and that's it, because I didn't know the correct things to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, just like over this break, I took QPR training, which is a suicide prevention, certification, essentially, just to kind of educate yourself on things you can, what are the good things to say and not say.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's great programs out there. In fact, you know what, guys, I'm really excited that Chris brought this up. Stay tuned for more details. In the month of March, we're going to be offering something pretty incredible at NGBN, a chance for men around our country to get free certification training, right? It's going to be webinar virtual style, but to be able to go through that process, to know what to say, right? To Chris's point, to know what to say next in the conversation. If guy says this, obviously we're not fully trained professionals. We can't clinically help someone, but you can walk them through the steps and ideally get them out of that moment of crisis and on to the next thing. Tell me, man, just before we wrap it up, just the mission of this organization, right? What are you guys going to be doing? And also, how can folks help you out too?
Well, I mean, the mission, to me, the most important mission is, really, I want to curb the epidemic of veteran suicide through funding veterans treatment for as long as needed, right? And a lot of that could be focused. We're heavily focused on mental health. That's not to say we help people through service connections, through if they have limitations or an amputee. There's a million different things that we do. But the most important thing to me is, one, I want to save lives. I want to optimize people's lives and put them back in the driver's seat of life. I think a lot of people that are struggling, they feel like they're just in the passenger seat of a vehicle going through life and they have no control. So kind of my goal and our goal as an organization is to empower veterans to take the driver wheel back of life and have an impactful life that they're happy about, So that's kind of what we do. And that's the most important thing to me, is just making an impact in curbing that epidemic of veteran suicides, because it's just an epidemic that's been going on for too long. And I want to create a movement of a true movement based on relationships. That's what kind of sets us apart from a lot of other people. They're focused on one modality. We leverage all these other nonprofits and their skill sets and their brick and mortar. We fund and create, we have a pipeline of veterans in need. We fund them, we punch them out, reassess, and get them on to the next thing until they're ready to go. So
yeah, it's incredible, man. It's incredible. Let me put it back up there. bkvf.org. You go check them out. I mean, just doing incredible work. We got introduced again last November, kind of thrown into this shared mission of working alongside this Enough project, but got to hear more about what they were doing. And what was really incredible to me is that what Chris and his team have stood up, I mean, they've done it in about a year. You'd think this group has been around for 10, 15 years. So the man's hustling, as you can probably guess. He's like, I got to go.
800% growth in our first full year. We started in 22. Yeah. So 22 wasn't a full year, but going into 23 was our first foundational year, is what I call it. And we're on track right now to better that. And that's kind of my goal, but we don't want to compromise the quality to the veterans in need. That's kind of my thing. I got to control growth.
Yeah, that's right.
Sure, look, at the end of the day, all I care about is the veterans in need. So it's not about me and my, or our accomplishments as an organization as far as growth. If we cannot compromise our quality, and we won't compromise our quality to the veterans, because, the veteran community is, if you mess up, they'll let you know about it. So it's kind of good. But yeah, if anybody wants to help out, they can go to bkvf.org, as you mentioned. You can donate. You can ask. We're actually starting some peer-to-peer programs where people can get involved in our neighborhood as far as fundraising, rucks, runs, and things like that. You can come out to our events. You can just hang out if you're a veteran and become part of that community again, which is fun. And our next event is coming up in on February 10th up in Augusta, Georgia, which is a Mardi Gras masquerade kind of theme, and we're calling it Unmasking Veterans Mental Health. So I'm pretty excited about that. We got Nick Lavery as a keynote speaker, also a Green Beret, extremely exceptional person.
Been on this show, great dude, a couple times.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear his story because I know he did on Ryan and things like that, and I haven't sat through it quite yet. So I gotta pick up a copy of his book beforehand. But I'm happy I get to hear him in person.
Yeah, you guys will have a great time together. Yep.
Yep.
He's a great human, brother. This has been man, it's been fun. It's been interesting, emotional. I've been just grateful for the time to be able to do. I'm so thrilled for what you guys are doing, man. Doing something that is stepping into the fray, but also doing it in a way to unite, right? Bring other organizations together. You heard Chris say, like, man, we can't do it all on our own. We'd be foolish to try to do it. Let's go find other folks that are rowing the ship in the same direction we are. And that to me is what's pretty incredible. And that's a little bit of picking up the six, right, my brother?
That's right, man.
That's right. All right, man. More to come. It's bkvf.org. He's Chris Cathers. Thanks, bro.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it, Brian.
We'll be right back. Pick Up the Six is sponsored by Mudgear. Mudgear serves the unleashed with gear for the modern hybrid athlete that's made tougher. They've created strong, functional performance gear like their performance shirts, shorts, and socks. I wear Mudgear on the regular. Whether it's for a road race, an obstacle adventure, or a ruck, Mudgear can help you gear up for extreme performance. Go to mudgear.com, use the code PUT6, and save 15% off today.
Welcome to Tripping Through Transformation. I'm your host, Guillaume Poirier, and I'm inviting you on a journey that will expand your outlook on life. Join me as we delve into the realms of mental health, resilience, personal growth, community, and alternative healing. Through personal narratives and expert insights, we'll explore the transformative power of shared stories. Get ready to escape from narrow perceptions and dive into a world of diverse perspectives. Tripping Through Transformation is where stories become pathways to empowerment.
Man, shout out to my man Guy and just everybody part of this NGBN family. We're so thrilled that you're on this pirate ship with us during this sneak peek. It's been an exciting time getting this channel up and running. We've got more content coming your way, all in an effort to create content for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s to save men's lives. So Chris and I talked about what they're doing at Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation, this amazing work they're doing to serve veterans. They just had an incredible gala where we were a part of it. We got to be on the ground in Augusta with them, brought the Pick Up the Six Productions crew down there to capture some great photos and video from their event. And of course, I'd love to show that. I'd love to show it to you. I'd love to show you what we do here from a production standpoint. Not only do we host this show, but we create purpose-driven production, purpose-driven stories, right? Because we want to just help, share the impact of what our partners are doing. So we were on the ground in Augusta, Georgia for the Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation Gala. I'd love to show that to you now.
10 February 2024.
Should we get the party started tonight?
Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation descends on Augusta, Georgia for the Mardi Gras Masquerade Gala.
Our slogan for this event was Unmasking Veterans Mental Health. That's really one of the things that we do at BKVF. It's one of our missions to destigmatize veterans' mental health.
Keynote speaker and Green Beret, Nick Lavery.
On my third trip into Afghanistan in 2012, I would be wounded in combat on 3 separate occasions. Well, on this particular day, prior to us launching, a member of the Afghan National Police Force, a guy that we've been working with for months, climbed up on the back of a Ford Ranger pickup truck that had a mounted PKM belt-fed machine gun and opened fire into me and my teammates from about 30 feet away. Most of my damage, as you could probably guess, was to my right leg. I took an estimated 5 or maybe 6 rounds to my right leg, which essentially vaporized it. And it's in this moment that I know without question that this is where I die. So I'm doing this and I'm in and out of consciousness and I come to and I'm being carried on a stretcher and I'm being loaded on a helicopter. Turns out it had been over an hour and a half. And it was in that moment as I'm being loaded on this bird, that for the first time I questioned myself. And I said, you know what, man? Maybe you were wrong. Maybe you can battle through this.
But the fight wasn't over. After a long recovery process, Nick is now considered the first Special Forces operator to return to combat as an above-the-knee amputee.
You will learn that there is more inside of you than you or anyone else has ever known to be true, and when you see it unveil before your very eyes, you will sit back in shock and awe of what you and I and all of us as human beings are truly capable of. Chris and the rest of your team, I tip my hat to you, brother. Not just to you as an individual. You are an absolute warrior. You are an absolute inspiration. You are a personal hero to me that I will forever look up to for your own personal journey and your willingness to attach yourself to a purpose despite all odds against yourself, still living for something greater than yourself, to create an impact on others. You, sir, are a living example of everything that I'm talking about right now.
This is Brothers Keeper Veteran Foundation.
Chris and this organization will fail without you and others like you that see the need, that respect the mission, and are willing to step up into the breach to provide that support. And you guys just simply being here tonight are now deeply ingrained in that fight.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Pick Up the Six. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.